So let's, I'm sure we've all had interesting days, not exactly in the sense that the Chinese use it as a curse, but we've had a busy day since we got up in the morning. I'm sure many thoughts, maybe some worries, some plans, some hopes, some fears, some excitement, some maybe some of us had some upsets. So now we can let go of that because we can feel that we're all together with our Dharma friends. We're together with people who are willing to look inside and look at the source of our experience within the mind. Certainly the root, the main root of our happiness and our sorrow and so forth. We're all willing to work with that, look at that. And we're willing, we must have been willing, if we're here, to at least slow down temporarily and begin to pay attention to this phenomenon we call a person, me, whatever. So let's start with the basics, which is the sensation of body on chair, cushion, the ground, wherever you are. Just the feel of your body, the contact between the surface of your body and the surface of the object that you are in contact with. And of course, as soon as we make contact, there can often be a mental image as well. And that's interesting, isn't it? That we have a mental image of our body, a shape or something, some kind of image arises, which is not quite, it's not the contact, actually. It's not the actual sensation that is there between these two apparent solid bodies. The body of the object, the body of our body. I say apparently solid because scientifically it seems to be that they are not so solid, but they feel that way. And we have an image. We have a concept. But what is the actual sensation? Can we just get down to that? The actual sensation. On the hands, maybe in your lap, on your thighs and knees. Feet could be on the ground or on a cushion. They could be crossed, so then the soles could be in contact with space if you are in a full cross-legged posture, or they could be in contact with some other part of your legs. So just feel that, be aware of that as we begin to, if we can, let go of the conceptual or the overly conceptual realm and abide in something more, well, there's several words. I was going to say sensational, but that's not quite the right meaning. Something more just connected with the senses, with the sense of touch. And of course, there is breathing happening, so be aware of one's body as one breathes in through nostrils. If the nostrils are clear, maybe that we're also breathing in partly through our mouth. Feel that connection between the breath and the nostrils, the chest, and some of us may be able to feel the sensation in other parts of the body, not just nose, throat, chest. also the solar plexus, the abdominal region. Let there be a sense of serenity and calming down. A sense of, it's like coming home after a busy day of work in the field or office or wherever we are. We come home, there's that sense of appropriateness, wholesomeness. As we stop rushing around, and engage in what a more natural way of living would encourage and have more time for, which is not being so active, not being so mentally and physically, well, at least mentally so active. With the onset of evening and night, as we know in ancient cultures, either there was no light or there was very simple candle or lamp. So that encouraged a sense of slowing down and being peaceful and preparing for proper rest. But that way of life is compromised now. So we very much need this slowing down kind of integrational process of sitting without any particular kind of ambition or agenda, not doing it for profit, no profit motive, not trying to sell anything, not trying to sell ourselves. So there's a sense of aloneness, but which is possibly quite nourishing, not to be confused with ordinary loneliness. So with the breath as the companion, take a few deep breaths in and relax fully with the out breath, sense of letting go and dissolving with the out breath. One could imagine some of the debris of the day in the form of dark energy or smoke leaving the nostrils as we breathe out. All of the confusion, speediness, maybe some misunderstandings, etc. Just letting them go with the out breath. And perhaps we feel quite serene even, calm. But this is also the time to remember why we sit, the motivation, before we become somewhat cozy and attached to the piece. Let us remember the countless beings and we're only going to talk about humans and animals right now. Remember the inner, the external, the internal, pain, sorrow, so many beings are experiencing. Countries torn apart. One day it's, Ukraine, another day it's, we hear about Somalia. Nowadays it's also Sudan. So, and of course, we have our own fair share in India of, probably kind of unspeakable pain and difficulties for many, many, many people. And there are also people we know, our friends, relations, are suffering. They have not and might not ever in their life experience just that sense of calm and peace that some of us may have experienced already in this session. They'll never experience that in their whole life. Perhaps even their sleep is fitful. As a child who goes to sleep hungry, perhaps their sleep is fitful and not very restorative, and their dreams are disturbing. So many children in the world going to bed like that. So we remember them. We're part of that human family. Or we might occasionally look into the rather tired and, little sad perhaps, but not very happy eyes of the garbage man in the morning as he sifts through the garbage created by us more prosperous people, with his shabby clothes. Or we may pass a blind person in the morning with their white stick, inching their way, tip-tocking their way to their destination. Very bravely, it seems, with the scooters and the traffic whizzing past, but just carrying on. Hard to imagine not having sight. So anyway, there are countless beings who can remind us of sadness, the suffering of samsara, our own sadness, our own pain. But the point about the Dharma is we can join that sadness and pain with the kind of confidence and joy of knowing that everybody has the Buddha nature and that therefore nobody is finally damned or condemned. Everybody does have the potential to generate the causes of happiness, lasting happiness, beyond concept, beyond words. This is the saving factor, isn't it? And one can, when one passes people who evoke this kind of thought, or one can remember one of the verses from Shantideva, which His Holiness said was also one of his ones that he loved, is that those who are worn with toil, shabby and worn with toil, may their bodies be endowed with majesty. So one can make little aspirations here and there, which it is said can bear tremendous fruit in the future. We are actually able to be of more benefit to others in all kinds of ways. Their temporal needs and deeper needs, until we become those sublime beings who have the aspiration to Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings, the Bodhisattvas. So let's motivate that during the session, where we will remember, we will recount some of the extraordinary, I think, and very interesting tales of Guru devotion, Guru activity, and we'll dedicate, motivate that will help us to be of, be of good cheer, as Trungpa Rinpoche would say, or as the Christian brethren would say. We can not only be of good cheer, but we can also be a tremendous benefit to other people due to our sense of upliftedness and not being downhearted and wallowing in despair. So to generate that, we first need a calm, clear mind. So we'll sit together quietly for a few minutes and be aware of the breath. Or if you wish, you can continue with your motivation. If that has been useful, you can abide in that, the feeling that may have arisen from the motivation. And otherwise, be with the breath, sense of letting go with the out breath. Noticing when the chattering mind seems to take over, look at it with a sense of humor and just let it go. Don't get annoyed with it, just see how it arises, see that it has arisen and let it go. Back to the breath. So please take a few moments to stretch if you need. So there's so much to be said. And today I have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 books surrounding me. Of course, I'm not going to quote from all of them. That would be too much like, what's it called? That Swedish word I can never pronounce. Smorgasbord or something. Anyway, where you have a large variety of edibles available, and one can choose a whole bunch, mix them together in various ways, and get something out of it. So the main thing here is to go back to the Four Noble Truths, which is where it starts, isn't it? Suffering. There's been beginningless suffering due to beginningless ignorance, and we have beginningless Buddha nature, but we don't know how to unlock the Buddha nature. So compare that situation with someone who wants to be a carpenter, doesn't know how to be a carpenter, so they apprentice themselves to a master carpenter, right? And then after a while, they become a good carpenter and they can make money out of carpentry and make very pleasing objects, very useful objects. People appreciate, people pay, and so one makes one's living that way. And the apprentice, if they are any kind of decent human being, they are so grateful to the master carpenter, right, for teaching them that profession, for teaching them that craft with which they can make a living, make pleasing objects, and so forth. Now, if we compare that to what a qualified guru can provide, given in the context of the Four Noble Truths, in the first truth you heard about quite intensively on Tuesday from Sujitji. So if you think about suffering and the various levels of suffering, and you think, I've been going through this beginninglessly. I mean, it's impossible really to get a hold of that, really. It's such an outrageous idea. But even just to look at this life's problems, or the problems of people around you, and to think this has been going on for some time. And if there were a person who could really help us see why this is happening, not only why, but how to emerge out of that, situation, and not only emerge, but thrive and go forward and help other people get out of that situation. I mean, wouldn't we be very eager to find such a person who could do that for us? You know, because right now we are somewhat blinded by what's the word? Obscuration is a word used a lot, which suggests that we have so much karmic baggage that there are certain things we just don't see. It's like we really are wearing certain kind of glasses, dark glasses, and we just have forgotten we're wearing them. We don't know. So everything we see is distorted or dark. So wouldn't it be amazing to have somebody qualified to tell us not only what's wrong with us, but how to be free of that situation, you know, and not be afraid to tell us the truth about it. Not somebody who's just pretending they know, or somebody who's just giving us a palliative, something to feel better for a little while, like somebody might toss a few aspirins or painkillers towards you, at you, if you have certain symptoms. Not like that. Someone who's willing to does understand the very root of our problem. And due to their skill and other qualities, they know exactly how to get on our case and solve our case. Almost like mind our business. And which could be excruciating, of course, for our persona, our self-image, our ego, various names we can use. Here we're talking about somebody, of course, who is willing to undergo that process. It's not like gurus or teachers come up to people and just start, interacting with them in that way. We have to have some kind of connection with a teacher, with a genuine teacher. A charlatan, of course, will come up to you and say, I can help you, and blah, blah, blah. But a real guru doesn't come up to you usually like that. One has to create certain circumstances and be ready for that person and so on and so forth. They're not advertising themselves, Of course, courses are advertised, but they don't come up to you in the course and say, I can be your guru, or, do you want to be my chela, and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, so the real guru, and I found this to be the case in my own experience, my own limited experience, the guru is somebody, one way or another, insults us, insults our ego, helps us to begin to see our shortcomings in a very direct and painful way sometimes, and puts us in situations where we are squirming and want to get out as quickly as possible. But, they kind of keep you in that, what the ancient alchemists would call the alembic, where you are burnt, you are put in a kind of container. Yeah, you are put in that and you are cooked. And then if you're lucky, some kind of gold comes out of the iron ore or whatever it is, something happens. Or else you just shrivel up and scream and shout and maybe try and run away. Anyway, the real guru is somebody who, you see, we should be very grateful for, that they are helping us to reverse the process we've been going through since beginningless time, which is just dig ourselves deeper and deeper into the pit of samsara through our ignorance and through all the karmic actions we keep on engaging in. Yeah. So as it said, very simply, and I think very very effectively, by Dzongtse Rinpoche in his book on the preliminary practices, where there's a section appropriately entitled, Why do we need a guru? Why? Especially in the context of today, when so many gurus misbehave, so many gurus, charlatans. It's a scientific age. We feel we should do things on our own. We don't need people sitting on thrones or with long hair and beards telling us what to do, or wearing particular robes and giving up all sorts of things and pretending that they know. Why should we have a guru? So, as he said, imagine how grateful you'd be to somebody who just helping you to gain a craft through which you can make your living. How much more grateful would you be to someone who is teaching you how to be free of samsara and who can help you attain spiritual enlightenment, total enlightenment, and not by having to become a monk or nun, but being able to do that in your daily life, perhaps, showing you very clearly how it's done. And how do they show us that is, of course, if we have the patience to watch, then as Venerable Tenzin Priyadarshi quotes Albert Schweitzer, and of course, don't forget, Venerable is teaching at Tushita on the 6th of May on bodhicitta. Albert Schweitzer said, there are only 3 ways to teach a child. The first is by example, the second is by example, and the third is by example. So here we have a situation which I have seen with my own eyes of teachers, often in ill health, often with all sorts of constraints, but their whole life seemed to me to be one kind, just example after example of how to live, how to help, how to teach, how to go beyond the lazy mind, how to go beyond limited mind, because we all have limited conceptions. I mean, just one example that comes to mind, Lama Zopa Rinpoche was staying at Root Institute quite some years back when we had our original buildings. And there was a little not hedgerow, but there was a little privet hedge. And the birds were scampering around. Sparrows or small birds were scampering around and looking for grubs to eat. And Rinpoche comes along and shoos them all away, making loud noises and shooing them away. And I was wondering, why is he doing that? Here are the birds, happily searching for their food. And here comes, Rinpoche and shoos them away. And then later I realized that, okay, so he was trying to prevent them eat those grubs, right? Which meant killing. Now, of course, Rinpoche knows that those birds are only going to survive largely going to survive by eating other little creatures, insects and so forth, whatever. But as in the example of the example of the Buddha and the butcher, which we'll remind you of in a minute, he is, I think, excuse me, he's giving a very strong planting a very strong imprint on the mind stream of those birds, because birds also have minds. And he's planting that strong imprint of not to eat little creatures, not to have that kind of body which survives by spending most of the day looking for live things to eat, or quite a lot of the day, okay? It's, of course, nice for us. We of course could say, look, if all the birds go out of existence, get extinct for one reason or another, we'll be impoverished. Well, yes, but long term, if you think how a bodhisattva thinks, a bodhisattva wants beings to attain enlightenment, right? So attaining enlightenment will also involve some basic vows, like not killing. So if birds are killing to eat, and I'm not saying they're doing it with anger or anything, but they are creating that karma to be mini carnivores. So here comes the guru and is trying to give them a big shock and give them a little bit of a not very nice association connected with killing. Anyway, that's the way I saw it. I may be reading too much into it, but otherwise, why would Rinpoche shoo away a whole lot of birds when he's supposed to be a loving person who's supposed to love everybody? And, maybe he should be more like St. Francis, talking to them and so forth. Of course, sometimes he does. He does recite mantra and so forth to birds and animals and also to beings that you and I can't see. But in this case, he shooed them away. So anyway, what I'm saying is the guru doesn't just behave in a nice, smiling, pleasing way to please us and feed our expectations and act in a way that we think is appropriate based on our preconceptions. The guru's job is to destroy our ego, is to insult us so that the ego gets stripped away, because the ego is the source of all of our pain. All of our suffering comes down to that, self-grasping ignorance and the self-cherishing activity that automatically arises from that self-grasping ignorance. That a cognitive mistake leads to the behavioral mistake of behaving in a very self-centered way. And so that is what is making the samsara go round and round. So the guru is someone who can put an end to that process. So should we not be grateful? Should we not respect such a person? Should we not be willing to, clean that person's shoes, touch their feet, if they have diarrhea, wash their bottoms and take away their caca and so forth? Should we not be prepared to do that if we're serious? If we understand that, what they mean, what the meaning of the guru is, It's like someone, we'd be happy if someone fished us out of jail. If some clever lawyer got us bail and then got us out of jail, where we were expecting to spend, let's say, a year, 10 years, wouldn't we be incredibly grateful to that lawyer? But then think of someone who could save us having eon after eon of unbearable meaninglessness and suffering, in future lives through not having created the right causes to have a human rebirth and follow the path, etc., etc. I mean, it's just, there's no comparison, is there? So that's why the Buddha is considered, especially in Vajrayana, as far more kind than all the Buddhas of the past, present, and future, are kinder. Because the past Buddhas have gone, the present Buddhas, they're not, well, these are the present Buddhas. But we're not in touch with most of these Buddhas. We're in touch with our Guru. He or she is the Guru for us, is the Buddha for us. And the future Buddhas, they haven't yet come. So our present Guru is kinder than past, present, and future Buddhas, all put together. Kind of, it's like the bird in the hand is worth millions in the bush. So, of course, as Rinpoche goes on to say, Rinpoche, sadly, the word Guru has all but lost its original meaning, because the deluded beings of this time are greedy for everything pure and stainless, so they grab at the principle of the Guru, spoil it, reject it, and then move on to another perfect treasure to lay waste. It's happened far too often, and as a result, Gurus are now mistrusted in the modern world and often ridiculed in popular culture. Nevertheless, for somebody serious about following a spiritual path, there is no substitute for being guided by a Guru. We follow the spiritual path in order to defeat our emotions, our deluded emotions, and attain enlightenment. To achieve that goal, we need the discipline, guidance, and the courage to confront everything that we have spent lifetimes trying to avoid. And this is exactly what the Guru provides us with by challenging our preconceived concepts, disrupting our lives, and most important of all, denying ego's every wish. So therefore, as the great Jigme Limpa strongly advised, we should do a great deal of research about a Guru before we give him or her carte blanche to torpedo our lives, because we must be able to trust that person completely. Unfortunately, very few people these days focus on such details, and this is often overlooked. So, of course, when we first meet the Guru, we may be in a very whining mood. We have had problems and disruptions and so forth. People aren't behaving the way we like. So we think it's a person we can just bring our complaints to, and I've seen that, and I've done it myself to some extent, and not as much as some people. We can whine at the Guru, we talk things over, pray to them, a kind of stand-in for our psychiatrist, psychologist, or even a stand-in for God. It may take a while, but eventually we realize the only way out of this painful existence is enlightenment, and that we can only attain enlightenment by following the spiritual path and finding a spiritual master. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. I can't see any of you because you're all rectangles. So I don't know if you're nodding your heads, or if you're asleep, or what you're doing. Zavatir, does that make any sense? It probably would make sense to you because you've taken so many teachings. Vivekji, does that make any sense? You can not quickly. I saw you, Vivek. You can't run away like that. He thinks he can. That's the thing with Zoom. You can pretend you're just asleep or something. Okay. So now some examples from the history, because it's just amazing. It's just amazing, these examples. And we shouldn't just take them as, as fairy tales. I don't think they're fairy tales at all. Most of them anyway. So how does Marpa, the great teacher, the great master of Milarepa, who tamed Milarepa, the murderer, you could say, tamed him within a very short spell of time, gave him teaching, set him off into the mountains, and the guy attains enlightenment in that life. Can you imagine, by the end of his life, having murdered all these people earlier on in his life with his powers that he'd learned from the black magic guru. So what does Mapa say? He was a great translator. He, as he said in this quote, is very clear. I mean, just the dedication of these people is amazing. But they're dedicated because not only were they trying to get the Dharma to Tibet, you see, but they knew that the only way to do that was to have tremendous dedication for their Indian gurus, you see, and to be patient and to try again and again. And so this is what Marpa says in his third journey to India. So first of all, Mapa, like Milarepa, he sings a lot. He sings his answers to people. That was the ancient tradition, wasn't it, in the world? Storytelling, singing, and so forth were a part of culture, which we're slowly losing, perhaps, or maybe not. Maybe it's coming back, thanks to YouTube and other things. Mapa sang this. Anyway, there was one song. Then they asked him, you, the translator, in general, how many gurus did you have beyond Nepal? Remember, they're talking to someone from Tibet. Whom do you regard as your principal guru? When you stayed at the feet of the master, what virtues of his greatness did you see? What principal oral instructions did you request? In reply, the Lord translator, Marpa, sang this song. Successor of the great Brahman, he has realized innate truth free from extremes, the extremes of nihilism and eternalism, and is therefore the yogin of space beyond analogy. His name is renowned as Maitripa. I am a follower of the tradition of this father, Jetsun. Jetsun basically means someone who has gone beyond the suffering, gone beyond ordinary, renunciation, has reached bodhicitta and emptiness and beyond, Jetsun. So I'm the follower of this father Jetsun, referring to Maitripa. He is a yogin for whom meditation is inseparable from the path. Then he says something amazing, which always makes my hair stand on end. This Marpa, the translator, was born in an inferior place, but the place he visited is supreme. I went to India 3 times without consideration for life and limb. I sought the holy Dharma. I met the Lord Nirmanakaya Buddhas, who accepted me with abhishekas along with their oral instructions. Now I will repay their kindness. You asked me, how many gurus do you have? I'm linked with 13 gurus by dharmic aspiration. In particular, there are 5 great siddhas. Among them, there are 2 lords, unrivaled by anyone, chiefly Mahapandit Naropa, and after him, Prince Maitripa. The kindness of Maitripa is even greater than a mother's. Missing him more and more, I went to the Ganga River in the east. At the monastery of the Blazing Fire Mountain, in the cool shade of a Nyagroda tree, I saw the great Lord Master sitting there. Joy like that of the first Bodhisattva Bhumi arose in my mind. I presented an offering to please the Dakinis, as a mandala to please the Guru. I set out flowers of pure gold. I joined my palms and offered a full prostration. Longing with one-pointed mind, I supplicated him. Then he says what he requested and so forth. He talks about Naropa. He talks about them. He said he went without consideration for life and limb. And that was a big deal. These Tibetans going down into a country they'd never been before with different temperature, different food, different everything. And many got sick, got ill. As I said earlier, some of the lamas who came after the Chinese invasion, they got TB. Many of them died, everything was just a bit too much for them. There were so many germs in the air in India, especially in the moistness of the northeast, where they were cloistered. So, 3 times. And one time when Marpa came, due to the jealousy of somebody else, he lost a lot of the texts he was bringing back to Tibet from India. So then again, he had to go back to India. So he made 3 journeys. He says the kindness of Maitripa, even kinder, even greater than a mother's kindness. And if we, as we've looked a little bit at the kindness of the good mother, and mothers in general, and we've seen how extraordinary it is. So if a guru is kinder than a mother, then we have to think about what that means. And if we look at it in the Dharmic context, it makes sense. Mother gives us life in this life, this one life. Or you could say mothers beginninglessly have given us lives, but they've not given us freedom from the pain of samsara. And one could say that they have actually been helpers in birth. And birth, as Nagarjuna says, is the beginning of bad news, if it leads to suffering, old age, sickness, and death. So anyway, the guru is kinder than the mother for Marpa. Yeah. Even though he says, I'm unworthy. This is his song, it's part of his song still. Even though I'm unworthy, my guru is good. Thus I solve the final point of the view of dharma and have no fear of falling into inferior views. This is the approach of the great Lord Maitripa. Gladden your hearts and practice in this way. So it's a marvelous, these biographies are marvelous. I think excellently translated, or of course I don't know the original Tibetan, but they seem marvelous translations. And the poetry seems a good way to impart a lot of this. A lot of it, seems strange. And there was something very useful I came across in the discussions between Samdang Rinpoche and one seems very excellent Western student of Krishnamurti. And remember, Samdang Rinpoche is very close to the great sage Krishnamurti. And, at one point, also some of you know, Krishnamurti never gave much weight to the guru. He kind of put gurus down. I think very usefully, actually, because in Indian culture, sometimes they're raised too high and so on and so forth. So Krishnamurti was playing, I think, a kind of devil's advocate and getting people to stand on their own feet more, kind of thing. But one reads about experiences, that people had. And the student, Western student, was asking Krishnamurti about the experiences that Krishnamurti is said to have had in California when he would undergo kind of strange kind of fits and pain in his body and have visions, as he put it, of Lord Maitreya several times, and which led to tremendous physical hardship. And it was like he felt his whole physical vehicle was being made ready for some kind of influx of enlightened energy of Maitreya Buddha, whatever. So the Western student asks Krishnamurti about this, because Krishnamurti keeps on saying that one shouldn't go for gurus, one shouldn't be involved with the guru principle in a sense, or with gurus. He doesn't say guru principle. Then Samdang Rinpoche says, any great personality who attains enlightenment without the assistance of another, or even one who is aided by another, or is said to be used by another for certain purposes, these happenings will always remain a kind of mystery. It can't be explained. This is important when looking at all of this material, I think. It can't really be explained by ordinary people who have not reached the level of enlightenment of those who have. So it's useless to discuss it. Because whether Krishnamurti met the masters or did not meet the masters, or the masters taught him or did not teach him, all this is within our imagination or thought realm. What they have done or experienced, we cannot question or perceive or even conceive of in our thought realm. So it's better to leave it. I think Krishnamurti in his later years did not indulge in discussing these things. He neither denied them or accepted them. Many times he said not to talk about all these foolish things. These things are not foolish, but if we discuss them, they become foolish because our thought realm cannot touch what they might mean. So I think this is also useful. I mean, it's wonderful to have what Marpa and Naropa and all the other great beings have written. But in one sense, we have to realize that they're talking about something that they've experienced, yeah? And our thought realm, my thought realm, cannot touch their experience until we ourselves, do, engage in purification, accumulation of positive energy, generate genuine devotion, then we'll know what these people experience. Otherwise, how do we know? I mean, how can we explain someone who is beaten, who is kicked out of a teaching hall in front of other students, who is made to build something and tear it down 3 or 4, 5 times, and still have incredible devotion towards that person who's making him do it? Even more than a dog or a master, right? How can we explain that? This is the kind of devotion Milarepa had towards Marpa. I mean, how do you and I explain this? It's obviously something which is, in one sense, as Samdog Rinpoche says, foolish to engage in it with the thought realm, right? And here is also where karma comes in. It's very clear from the teachings on karma in general and from the dreams that it said that Marpa had, that he had an incredible connection with Milarepa and vice versa, and that this being was going to come into his life and he would be as great or as great as the guru, become as great as the guru. And so Marpa knew that this kind of renegade who came into his presence, having killed people, was actually a real gem of a student. But he had all this garbage, kind of stuck to him, you could say. And so Marpa, being a great guru, and nice to know he was a guru with wife and kids and drank beer, and he was a farmer and all these things, but he was a great guru. And he knew that if he could be wrathful with the student, he could have him purify all of the negativity. And it's then remarkable because then he took teachings and quickly, went off and again, just became an inspiration for others. But you'll notice in the wonderful songs of Milarepa, which of course are the most famous in the Tibetan tradition, that almost at the beginning of every utterance, teaching song utterance, he remembers the guru. He remembers Marpa, his guru, most movingly, and regards Marpa as being on the crown of his head. So again, this is a reminder of the importance of the guru, and also a reminder that we should not get carried away by pride, because it's very easy to begin to think that we're really great and we kind of become equal and then surpassed our guru, and we may have, but to think like that is ridiculous. So the guru introduces us to all of this. How are we doing? So yeah, just a little more and then we can have some, just as far as the kindness of the guru is concerned. I want to quote something from Dingo Chense Rinpoche's, the introduction to his autobiography. Dingo Chense Rinpoche was a great master, and it seems that very great. I mean, he taught His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He was one of Lama Zopa Rinpoche's gurus. The great good fortune of meeting him at least twice, once in Lama Zopa Rinpoche's presence when we went into the monastery in Kathmandu, and Dingo Chense Rinpoche was a huge man. He was sitting on the throne and he would often sit naked from the waist up. And there he was on the throne giving teachings or presiding over, I think, Drupchen, which is a 10-day purification practice. And there he was. So Rinpoche took us in. Lama Zopa Rinpoche took us in, and we filed past, and then he was hitting everyone on the head with a Tibetan text, as the blessing. He was an extraordinary, larger than size person, literally. He was huge. But the great thing about him, he had this amazing affinity and desire to keep alive all of the 4 major schools of Tibetan Buddhism. So he's totally non-sectarian, although he was mainly with the Nyingma tradition. But he had, everybody, the great thing about him was, according to Dzongtse Rinpoche, in the lineup of people to see him, and there'd always be lineups of people to see him, there would be members of all of the traditions of Tibetan Buddhism, which is wonderful, really, because he was eager to receive and preserve all of the lineages of teachings, which meant that even if a simple monk came along with a text from a particular lineage which he had not received, he would have that monk sit down and very respectfully receive the oral transmission of that teaching, of that text, from whoever it was, a simple monk or some great Rinpoche or whatever. He would do that. And here in this short extract I'm going to read, Dzongtse Rinpoche is talking about his how he was extremely disciplined, I think, something else. He would, take a short break to breathe. I must point out, he says, that the kindness we're talking about here is beyond our ordinary way of thinking, because, of course, our concept of kindness is relative. Beings like us consider someone to be kind when they fulfill our wishes, cater to our whims, to the extent of not giving us what we really need just to keep us happy. Okay, never. Whatever my situation or circumstance, here he's quoting the great Jigme Lingpa again. Whatever my situation or circumstance, may I never feel the slightest wish to follow worldly ways which run contrary to the Dharma, even if while under the sway of karma and habitual patterns, a mistaken thought occurs to me, may it never succeed. He says, for me, this kind of prayer of aspiration describes exactly the kind of courage Dingo Chense Rinpoche showed, by never doing anything but just involve giving in to conventional expectations, however compassionate such actions might have appeared by ordinary standards. And then he said something which I actually felt so strongly about. I was in this cafe in Oxford, in the Oxford bookshop in Connaught Place, and I immediately WhatsApped Dzongtse Rinpoche. And he very kindly replied, saying, of course, oh, I don't know, I write lots of things that I don't understand and don't remember. But anyway, he said this regarding Dingo Chense Rinpoche. For a deluded being like myself, this tenacious reverence of Chense Rinpoche for the Dharma, his refusal to concede to conventional expectations, if it meant veering from this kind of aspiration, is an attitude I can personally identify with. This very courage of not giving in to other people's expectations is in itself true kindness. Giving in and doing what is expected of you is not kind at all. Giving in and doing what is expected of you is not kind at all. One might add, not necessarily kind at all. But anyway, he's making a point here. Then he says, never once in all the time I spent with Rinpoche did I see him turn away a single student without having fulfilled their requests and wishes. As he got older, many of those around him, for the very best reasons, would try to limit the number of visitors that he saw each day. And it never really worked, though, because if Chense Rinpoche found out that there were people waiting outside to see him, and he always did somehow, he'd simply go out to greet them. days before he passed away in Bhutan, I'll never forget it, a group of devotees from Hong Kong requested from Chense Rinpoche an Aryapara initiation. By then, he appeared to be very sick and could hardly talk. Nevertheless, he didn't refuse them. In fact, he made all the preparations necessary for the empowerment, and in spite of everything, had every intention of giving it. So anyway, and then a very nice last para of this forward to Dingwa Chense Rinpoche's life. And there's a great movie you should see called, documentary called Brilliant Moon, which they show regularly at Deer Park Institute on Chense Rinpoche's life. He said, he's now quoting one of his own traditional lamas, Sakya Pandita of the Sakya tradition. Dzongtse Rinpoche said, in order to make a fire, you need a magnifying glass, the sun's rays, and some kindling, in the old-fashioned way. And if even one of those elements is missing, you won't succeed. Likewise, the only way really to tackle our challenges in the easiest way is by receiving blessings from the Guru. What better way to invoke the Guru's blessing than by remembering him? What better way to remember him than by reading his autobiography? So those of you who've begun to read Lama Yeshe's amazing biography, the huge 2-volume Big Love, will get some appreciation of what Dzongtse Rinpoche is saying there, that how much inspiration one can gain by reading the life and of a Lama. And for sure, I'm sure there'll be something written about this incarnation with just, the late Kyabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And that will be incredibly inspiring for people. And actually, there is a biography of his last incarnation in Nepal as a Nyingma Lama called the Laudo Lama. And that also, which I haven't read though, is also no doubt very, very inspiring. So yeah, just one story from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, then we'll have discussion. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche was incredibly dedicated to his gurus, of whom he had many, and he would always try and have the pictures of his guru with him in most of the centers he visited, so he could see their pictures, see their faces, remember them, remember their kindness, and so forth. And he never failed to do all the practices that he had received from his various gurus, which I think by the end of Rinpoche's life included all of the traditions, mainly Gelug, of course, then Nyingma. He had Sakya gurus, the great Choge Trichin Rinpoche, whose temple at Bauda, with the Maitreya statue, that great Sakya Lama. And I think by the end of his life, he also had some Kagyu gurus, from whom he received transmissions on Vinaya and so forth. So he gave the story of a previous life of the great Serkong Rinpoche. And it took place at a little gompa next to the great stupa at Bauda. It's still there, I think, that little Gelug gompa there. For some reason, and Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche was there. For some reason, the students they were in breach of a kind of guru devotion because they had somehow created the causes for their own guru not to be there to give them some teachings because they wanted some, kind of more famous guru to be there to teach them. And they'd somehow, in some way, they had snubbed or something, or not acted with proper guru devotion towards their own guru. And Serkong Rinpoche knew about this. So Serkong Rinpoche was there giving this teaching to them. Being a very clairvoyant Lama, the kind of Lama, according to Rinpoche, he would go up to people. And this is very unusual, but obviously he went up to the people who needed it, to deal with it. He would go up to people and say, oh, you know what? You're going to die in so-and-so number of days' time. You better kind of get it together. He would talk like that to people. And he would say outrageous things, which were true, because he was a clairvoyant Lama. So anyway, this Lama was giving the teaching to these naughty students who hadn't behaved properly towards their guru. So what does he say? He says, and it's a very short teaching, and Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche loved it, and he loved to describe it. So this guru, he says to these students there, eagerly anticipating some great teaching or, whatever they'd ask for. He says, if your guru asks you to eat hot, fresh dog shit, then that's what you do. You get down on your knees, and he made slurping noises as though he were eating caca like a dog. He said, that's what you do. And then he got up and left. He left those students. So that is teaching on guru devotion, slightly unconventional, but it just shows that you don't misbehave with your guru. You don't put your guru down. If the guru, as one of my wonderful Australian Dharma friends said, there's no such thing as a request from the guru. And that's kind of dangerous, meaning don't take anything your guru says as a request. It's an order. You do it, Of course, yeah, if he tells you to go and kill people, you have to be careful. Yeah, you can ask him, well, is this really necessary, or why, or whatever. But yeah, we have to be careful what we ask for. But I thought that teaching was amazing, and which I love to, you can imagine, love to give that anecdote, because he was sitting there. So I wonder that there was no video, obviously, it was not recorded, but it must have been something. The Lama pretending to slurp up caca like a dog, saying, if your guru tells you to do that, you do that, So how many of us can do that? I don't think I can do that. Just one short story, very short, from Naropa, and how he, as they put it, performed great acts of self-denial, 12 of them, in order to please his guru Tilopa, and in order to receive teachings. Tilopa had this habit of sitting motionless and not saying anything for a long time. Whether it was for a year or not, one doesn't know, but he kept on doing this. And you can imagine this scholar from Nalanda, Naropa, who's been, rudely interrupted by that evil, ugly-looking hag who told him to go and search for Tilopa. And, he's spending his life running around after, with Tilopa, getting all these lessons. So anyway, this is the 7th lesson, act that he had to perform in order to receive the teachings on what's called the radiant light, maybe the clear light, whatever. Tilopa again sat motionless, silent, for a year. Naropa made the appropriate gesture, circumambulated him with folded hands, spoke his prayers, and when once Tilopa glanced at him, asked for instruction. Okay. If you want the Dharma, follow me, said Tilopa, and went away. When on their journey they met a minister conducting his bride home on an elephant, Tilopa said, if I had a disciple, he would have pulled them down and dragged them about. So Naropa, taking that as an order, did that. But the minister and his attendants beat Naropa thoroughly. And when he was unable to move with pain, Tilopa came up to him and asked, hey, Naropa, what's wrong with you? Naropa answered, you cannot play with this craftsman of a minister. In a jest, he ground me to a powder, and so I suffer. Tilopa said, this rock of your body, believing in an I, must be ground to powder, Naropa. Look into the mirror of your mind, the radiant light, the mysterious home of the Dakini. When he had healed him with his hand, he gave him the instruction on the radiant light, the inexistence of the darkness of unknowing. So anyway, very beautiful story, very amazing. They kind of surpass each other, these stories of Marpa, Milarepa, Marpa, Naropa. That's in order. Of course, you can also read the life of Tilopa, and I don't know who Tilopa's guru was. I haven't read his life. But these 3 lives of Milarepa, Marpa, and Naropa, if you like stories and you like a little bit of, otherworldly also, then please read the stories. But I believe such things could happen, although maybe not exactly like that, but sure. And you see how Tilopa used it skillfully to instruct Naropa on the basically something very deep and dharmic had to be explained that Naropa was ready for at that point. And he's graded. He goes through these 12 instructions, each of which require Naropa to engage in an act of self-denial. So there's it's called in the text, is 12 great acts of self-denial in order to obtain the instructions in full, and so attune his mind to the Guru's spirituality. The instructions on the ordinary wish-fulfilling gem, one valueness, commitment, the mystic heat, the heat yoga, apparition, dream yoga, radiant light, transference of mind, resurrection, eternal delight, Mahamudra, and the intermediate state of the Bhardo. So for each of these teachings, he couldn't just go in and say, right, please give me this teaching. He had to get beaten up or whatever else. And then out of his great kindness, of course, Tilopa would heal him and give him an instruction. The point is, isn't it, that Naropa was willing to do whatever his guru asked. And to us, that sounds like, that would be on Twitter very quickly, wouldn't it? That the disciple is being abused and, there would be hundreds of court cases against Tilopa for doing this kind of thing. But yeah, we're talking of something, as Krishnamurti says, we have to approach it beyond our little thought realm, our little bubble of, our little cocoon of prejudice and so forth, conditioning. Okay, let's have discussion. I'm sorry, talk too much. There's a lot to say. I had 9 books, so only one I neglected. All right. Okay, Ashish is asking something. I have an important question. I was willing to ask for a long time. It's a bit unrelated. Oh, but at the end, I would like to ask if you allow. Okay, yeah. So you allow first, Ashish ji. Let me unmute. Yeah. Go ahead, Ashish ji. Are you still there?
Hello.
Haji. Yeah. Ah, there you are. Okay. Bataiye. Bolo? You were okay before. You were unmuted before. Now you've muted yourself.
Okay. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, Kabir ji, कैसे हैं?
बढ़िया.
जी. मेरा क्वेश्चन थोड़ा सा अनरिलेटेड है, बट मेरा प्राइमरी क्वेश्चन ये है कि इज बुद्धिज्म atheistic in nature? So this is my primary, like I am right now reading the Buddha and his Dhamma, and yeah. So
is it atheistic?
Yeah, is it atheistic in nature, or is it agnostic, or is it properly theistic?
It's not properly theistic because it doesn't believe in a creator God. It believes in gods, but these gods are believed to be sansaric gods. They're not enlightened. They're just having a long, nice time, some of them, in meditation, or they have many powers, but they're not enlightened. It is not agnostic. Well, agnostic maybe initially the disciple is asked to be agnostic in the sense you are asked to doubt. You are asked to not accept anything immediately that the teacher or Buddha says. You're asked to question. So if that means agnostic, then kind of agnostic. It is atheistic in the sense that, there is no creator God. There is no God that you bow down to and feel that I'm a sinner and God is somehow great and will, if God wants, will lift me up through grace. If I'm lucky, God, I'll be one of the chosen ones and will be saved. There's none of that. There's no sense that God is up there and I'm down here as a sinner. There's the sense that, if you like, the God principle, the divine is within me. The Buddha nature is within me, and I can awaken it. Yeah, I may need somebody like a guru, for sure, to help me awaken it. And it can seem to some people that when we bow down and pray to Buddha, we are praying to a God, but it's not like that. When we pray to Buddha, we are praying to, you could say, our own wisdom. someone who is embodying our own wisdom, who can help us, like a mirror image of our basic goodness, of our basic enlightened quality. Does that make sense, Ashishji?
Yes, yes, a lot.
Okay. Yeah, Buddha and his Dhamma is a great book. The Samdang Rinpoche I just mentioned now in Krishnamurti's context, he once was giving a talk to Ambedkarites at Nagalok Center in Nagpur. He said, you guys should read this book. This is written by your leader, Baba Sahib. You must read it. And of course, most people have not read it. It's a great book, what I've read. I haven't read it every page, but what I've read, I like very much. Some of it I think is not right, but where he says that Siddhartha left the palace because of the dispute over the river water between two clans. I think that's nonsense. But anyway, Baba Sahib had his reason for writing the way he did, and he was a very brave man who helped a lot of people, obviously, still helping people with his example. But I think his emphasis on Shil and Karuna in the second part of the book is wonderful. And his explanation of rebirth, his discussion of rebirth is very useful for people. Yeah, very good. And he somehow brings it to life for people who are not ready yet to go through traditional texts or long philosophical commentaries or shastras and so forth. And of course, people who mistrust priests and monks and Brahmins and Sanskrit language, people who at that level not yet trusting those things, they can benefit so much from his book. Yes, for sure. Because it's clear that Baba Sahib has tremendous devotion toward the Buddha. That's for sure. So that is very useful, karmically very beneficial. And he discusses karma as well. It's not like he's shy of discussing these things. I think because he had a very fine mind. Let's not forget, he was highly educated and very brilliant. So yeah. Are you enjoying the book? Have you finished?
No, I am not finished. I am somewhat in initial pages itself, but yes, I am enjoying. So at the same time that question erupted in my mind again and again, and even so, that's why I decided to ask you.
Are you reading it in English or Hindi or Marathi?
In English.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, what else, folks? Or any examples, any anecdotes from your own experiences with your teachers, your gurus? Most welcome. Oh, hello, Ayesha. Thank you. Nice to see you again.
Hi, Kabirji.
Hope you're well.
Yes, thank you.
Good. Haji, Tabashir, you've had plenty of experiences with gurus. Anything to say? Don't have to. I think you're muted.
Oh, yes. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I don't know about how much experience, but just the question about gurus. Personally, I mean, I was wondering, because there is so much, there are so many teachings that have been, that continue to live on from teachers who are not present in their bodies anymore. Which is what the lineage is, I imagine. I mean, if, for example, Rinpoche, Jongsa Khyentse Rinpoche, it's like you look into his eyes and you see the lineage. It's like you're looking through a kind of history of something. And so when one is, because I personally have been listening so much to teachings from Mipan Rinpoche and Dujung Rinpoche, and of course Jogen Trungpa Rinpoche, name a few, and being deeply grateful for receiving with such generosity, because, and of course, Lama Yeshe is undoubtedly, I mean, one of the earliest teachings I received, in fact, was from Lama Yeshe's videos and writing, and it was incredible, the immediacy of receiving that, the teaching, and for me, that is alive. It felt like he is alive, still alive, because there is no, it's never dated. The teaching is, it's only reveals more and more. So I guess what I'm just I don't know if it's going to come into a question, but this the meaning of guru, therefore, you know, of course there is a root guru, and this, I'm still exploring this, you know, what this means. I, of course, want somebody who, there are so many, I'm surrounded by so many wonderful, you being one of them, of course, just whose presences I receive so much from. So, I mean, I just want, I suppose, just rambling. Just this question of guru and of course, reading books themselves. Would that also be something like considered?
Of course.
I've been listening to this one Samneri Jaya Sarah, I think her name is, and she has been reading. She's recorded these teachings from various teachers, and it is simply divine. I mean, it is such. I mean, the guided meditations from various teachers, from Urgyen Rinpoche,
Right.
Atro Rinpoche, Thubten Yeshe Rinpoche. It is just, it is so precious. It's like a treasure trove. It's, you know, so it's, for me, it feels like it's a direct, that the guru is everywhere. I mean, in that very literal sense.
Sure. Great. Yeah. I suppose, though, to just slightly go on a tangent, and thanks for that. But I'm thinking, because also I have an upcoming retreat, and I haven't done retreat for years. And retreats, in my experience, are not easy. And they're what the gurus, in one sense, want us to do most. In one sense, you know, to actually get down and practice. It's all very well to run around and serve the guru, but as you may know, that's not considered the highest form of practice necessarily. I mean, the highest form of repaying the kindness of the guru. The highest practice would be to get enlightened, right? So for that, often just, you know, sheer hard practice is the best. So I'm wondering whether, you know, part of my mind feels it's very easy to get, for me, to get high, slightly high on reading about gurus and disciples. But the test will come when one's in retreat and not having one's usual entertainments and not going out of a very circumscribed area, and maybe the knees beginning to hurt and so on and so forth. And so that's when the guru is actually doing their work. You know what I mean? Then the practice is the manifestation of the guru. And can we handle that level of the guru? And Dzongsa Rinpoche says it's a mistake. It's totally, you know, hallucination on our part to think that our mind has ever been separate from the gurus. So there's that sense that we really have to just get on with it ourselves and contact the inner and then the absolute guru within us, whom our guru has painstakingly been trying to introduce us to all their lives. And often they died before they could do it, you know. But we have the strong message and we know what has to be done. Hopefully, we know what has to be done. And it's not just reading nice books on the guru, you know. This is what I feel when I want to be tough with myself, and I think one needs to be. That one has to get on with the practice. Even if the ego is screaming that, oh no, you know, you can get away with just being someone who serves and runs around and, you know, does this and that, leads Zoom sessions, and all this is good. But Atisha's advice, the great Atisha, who helped restore some semblance of dignity and purity to Buddhism in Tibet, because it had already degenerated within 3 centuries. He said, before you yourself are really matured and ready, it's better just to be in the jungle, better to be in retreat. In other words, don't presume to teach people until you have mastered your own mind. That's wonderful advice. I can see more and more. Don't, stay in the jungle, stay in the forest, stay in your retreat. And then when you're really ready, and your guru will tell you when you're ready, then presume to teach people in this degenerate age. Well, it was already degenerate. It's sad, isn't it? It was already degenerate, according to Atisha, 1,000 years ago. And imagine how much more you would think is degenerate now. Yeah. So, yeah, I hope the guru is watching over us in several ways when we are doing our ego smashing, knee paining retreats, when we just want to scream or get out and run around, Don't you think? Otherwise, it's easy. Yeah, we have, go to a few teachings, read a few books, and we have our entertainments, our friends. And it's easy. Where's the ego being compromised? Where is the ego being challenged there? Really challenged. I think anyway, I'll soon be revising for my retreat, and Rinpoche has very kindly written so much on how to do retreat, what it means. And yeah, there won't be any compromise. Because Lama Yeshe's slogan was think big, and Rinpoche's was like do more. Do more practice, do more prostrations, do more mantras, work harder, sleep less, that kind of thing. Lama was much more gentle. You couldn't have 2 battering rams at once. So Rinpoche was one way, Lama was another. Now, I guess Rinpoche had to soften his teachings by surrounding himself with stuffed toy animals, to make his teachings seem a little more soft. Yeah, I don't know if you saw any of the videos, any of you, that Rinpoche, all those teachings he gave during COVID, during lockdown time, 2020 and 2021, there's dozens of teachings from Kopan, all of them he's surrounded with teddy bears and this and that, with slogans written on them. But what's coming out of his holy mouth is more difficult. Yeah. Anything else, folks? Vivekji, Ayesha, Neeraj, Apurva, Neil, Sujitji, Tushita Mahayana Meditation Center. Who's that?
That's me, Kabirji.
Oh, of course.
Richard.
Yeah. Richard. Yeah. And Saransh. Hello, Neeraj. Have you put on your video for saying something? Anyway, nice to see you. Nice to see you have a face. I hope AI doesn't infiltrate these kind of sessions and start giving better discourses than me, which they're quite capable of, apparently, with 2 seconds input. Neilji, pranam, Jai Bhim.
जय भीम कबीर जी, आप कब आ रहे हैं?
आप पता नहीं भाई साहब, बहुत व्यस्त हैं यहाँ, देखते हैं, व्यस्त और भटकता रहता हूँ इन्हें उन्हें
जी।
भटकना मेरा काम है, सीधे रास्ते पे नहीं रह सकता हूँ।
आप लोगों को रास्ता दिखाते हैं, आप कहाँ भटकते हैं?
गुरु जी ने बोला रिट्रीट करो, सुधर जाओ, तो सुधरना पड़ेगा।
So उसी कारण से उसी कारण से आप वो हिंदी में जो इंट्रोडक्शन टू बुद्धिज्म का
जी।
जो कोर्स था वो लेने
जी।
वाले थे,
जी जी
तो आपने, आपका नाम नहीं आ रहा है अभी. You're not
नहीं आ रहा?
mentioned on that. Earlier I saw your name.
अच्छा, 2 रिट्रीट है ना, एक डियर पार्क में है और एक यहाँ है आपके तुषिता सेंटर में है,
धर्मकोट में.
धर्मकोट। हाँ, तो ये 2
आप
हो
कौन
रहे
सा
हैं।
ले रहे हैं? आप तुषिता बीर.
तुषिता हम लोगों का, मेरा खास परंपरा है, हमारे गुरुजी का सेंटर जी। लेकिन चोगन रिम्पोचे बहुत बढ़िया लामा है, वो तो हर साल एक देते हैं बीर में, डियर पार्क में, तो वो तो वहाँ दे रहे हैं। वो तो बढ़िया ही रहेगा, वो तो पहुंचे हुए आदमी हैं, वो तो बोधिसत्व हैं। लेकिन मैं एक तरह का दूंगा जो बहुत बेसिक से लेकर के आगे तक, उम्मीद है कि वो काफ़ी अच्छा इंट्रोडक्शन मिलेगा लोगों को, तो वो करूँगा।
तो आप फिर से दोहराइए, आप where will you teach?
7 से 15 जून, 7 से 15
डियर पार्क,
तुषिता सेंटर,
तुषिता धर्मकोट. जी.
क्योंकि रिम्पोचे का शायद 9 तारीख से लेके 14 है शायद, 9 से 14।
अच्छा. जी.
इसी वजह से दोनों को उसी समय करना पड़ा, दूसरा टाइम नहीं था हम लोगों के लिए। लेकिन बहुत लोग प्यासे हैं, लोग तो बहुत लोग हैं, यूपी, राजस्थान, हरियाणा, दिल्ली साइड से आएंगे इन रिट्रीट्स के लिए। आगे कुछ बिहार के लोगों के लिए भी कुछ करेंगे। ठीक है, तो समाप्त करते हैं। सबको बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, धन्यवाद, थैंक यू वेरी मच। मिलेंगे सबसे, और ज़रूर अगर हो सके आप लोग
थैंक यू कबीर जी, थैंक यू.
थैंक यू। ये जो
थैंक यू.
ये जो लाइफ स्टोरीज है ना गुरुओं के, पहले के आजकल के भी, बहुत मज़ा आता है पढ़ने में, बहुत ही प्रेरित होता है दिमाग ये पढ़ के। तो अगर ऑनलाइन मिल जाएंगे, बहुत आसानी से मिलते हैं, लाइफ ऑफ मिलारेपा, मारपा, नरोपा, बहुत लाइफ ऑफ सोंखापा, बहुत बहुत कुछ है, तो पढ़ लीजिए। और so we dedicate the merit of this session के Kyabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche, जैसे हम लोगों के परंपरा में है कि वो जल्दी लौट के आए, बोधिसत्व हैं तो जल्दी लौट के आए और हमको आगे भी मार्गदर्शक बने, अंधेरे में कुछ रोशनी दिखाएं ताकि हम लोग आगे बढ़ सकें, और ऐसा हो तो या बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। और तुषिता का 6:30 बजे सुबह भी एक आधे घंटे का मेडिटेशन है, वो कल सुबह भी होगा। और हाँ, कल होगा शुक्रवार, मंडे टू फ्राइडे, तो उसमें भी भाग लीजिए, और या उसको आप बाद में भी सुन सकते हैं, या अगर आप 6:30 बजे मौजूद नहीं हैं तो बाद में भी सुन सकते हैं। ठीक है, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। प्लीज़ डेडिकेट कि ये सब हो, कि हमारे सब गुरु लोग बहुत लंबा आयु हो उनके, और स्वस्थ रहें, दलाई लामा जी और सब तो हैं, all have long and healthy lives, and all their holy wishes be fulfilled. May we accomplish their wishes. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night. See you Sunday morning.
Thank you, Kabir.
Possibly at Tushita, but otherwise Monday I'll be at Tushita also, and of course always online. Thank you.